This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you for joining us for the CAA Friday Night Webinar Series. We're happy to be back in January 2021 after a break for the holidays. And today we are welcoming Barry Dickinson, who is going to be talking to us about Turnout tradition in North America. Barry is originally from Canada, and he has been a lifelong carriage and driving enthusiast who has worked for all the best farms in Canada, England, and the United States. He's been a consultant worldwide, and we're very happy to have him as part of the CAA family. Barry, you are now live. So take it away. This is Barry's very first webinar.
Good evening. Good evening. Yes, well, we can get started because I think we have a lot of pictures to go through tonight and try to explain things of the days gone by and how they are carried forward to today. And so I hope that I will give you all the
thing I paid for. Mine
best.
doesn't take it, this go-to meeting. I got them verbal. But can you do it on your iPad? Can you send it to yourself?
Kathleen, I'm hearing people talk about. Kathleen, are you there?
Yes, you go ahead and talk and do your presentation. I'll take care of anyone that comes on whose microphone's not muted. So
Okay. So
Okay.
Kathleen, if you can start with the pictures, I think we can just have a go. I mean, I'll try to give you 60 years of knowledge in 60 minutes. So it hopefully it doesn't get too rushed.
Okay. Can you speak up just a tad for me, Barry?
How's
I'm
that?
sorry. You should be good. Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes, you're fine. Thank you.
What I've started off here is in 1909, Brewster and Company put out in the official horse show blue book a series of pictures with the appointments of their carriages and how they thought they should be turned out, what they thought was acceptable for their carriages. Now, this is the same as what you would find in Paris with the ladies' fashion show, when you had all the designers with their spring and fall creations, and they would have their runways walks, and they would have their pictures all shown up. And so this is what Brewster did as a carriage, and I'm sure other carriage companies did the same when they would come out with the spring and fall lines, because they were forever changing their styles, maybe just a little bit, and giving them new names and confusing everybody. But this is what Brewster did. And so we'll just go through. There won't be the appointments that they put in. They'll just be pictures, and I will explain the pictures as we go through them, and similarities, and what maybe now and maybe has continued on, or what maybe not has continued on. So if you can go on to the first picture, Kathleen, we'll get the show on the road. Okay, here we have a demi-male phaeton, or a stat demi-male. This is Judge Moore, and as you can see, he's at a nice outdoor formal show. The horses have pole chains. The groom is in just full dress livery, and so this is just a nice pair of harness horses, and with Judge Moore, a very prominent American exhibitor here and abroad. Nice pair of up-fronted harness horses that suit are in size for the carriage. That's the most important thing in America about tradition, was the horses were in the size of the carriage. We had smaller horses over here than they did in Europe. So our carriages, even though you'll see a European George IV or a European demi-male, they'll be much bigger than ours because we had smaller horses. 15.2 was an average size for a nice horse over here. And this is just a nice pair of gentlemen's driving horses. This pair is Lord and Lady Seton. He named his farm after Lady Seton, and these were the leaders also of his four in hand and his and used them as his tandem. So that's just a nice pair of horses. We will go to the next one, and we will show you something less formal.
Okay, did you want to talk about the pole chain?
I did, yes. There's pole chains on this. When pole chains go on a phaeton, and they're meant to be on phaetons, male phaetons, George IV, spider phaetons, demi-males. And at the end of the pole, where the two rings where the chains go in, that has to swivel. Otherwise, with the swing of the chains up and down, if it's not doesn't swing, the bolt or the nuts or screws that hold it there would be worn out. So that's called a langet, and that has to swivel. And so that's for an that is what they would call for an owner-driven carriage. Now, if you at the end of the pole and there was two rings or Ds and they were solid and they didn't move, that's when you would use pole straps. But with the pole chains, they have to swing, that end has to swing around. Okay, and of course, you remember the pole chains are part of the carriage. They're not part of the harness. Years and years and years ago, before this, they were actually welded onto the pole head. So one would come fixed on there, and then it would run up through the ring and at the kidney link ring, and then back to the end of the pole. So that is what you would do in a phaeton turnout years and years ago. And this is a more of a formal horse show. Now here we got Judge Moore again. Now, if you can see, he's not as, this is more of a, this is Newport, seaside resort. It was a water hole at those times. And as you see there, what I noticed about this, you see he's got pole straps on here. This is not a formal horse show. This is a summer event, and so he's got pole straps on here, less formal than he would if he had chains, you see. And then I just looked right now, is that the buckle is right on the pole, the back pad. If the horse was just a little loose, it would be just a hair, but you don't ever want that buckle to be behind the pole or the back pad, because that means it's pulling off the top of the back pad. It's not a straight line pulling from the hame tug all the way back to the splinter bar. So that's an important thing to see when you're just watching horses go around at the show ring or down the road. You want to have that, and the traces are tight. You want that buckle right on the pad. You don't ever want it to be behind the pad, because then you're giving your horse a sore back, because he's not supposed to be pulling off his back. It's supposed to be from the collar back to the splinter bar. Okay. And as you can see, this is a summer show. There's Judge Moore. He's got a straw boater on. The person next door to him is an employee, I would say, and he's in undressed livery, and he's got a bowler hat on. Judge Moore's got his boater. The groom for Judge Moore has leggings, and that is a very lovely example of undressed livery or stable livery. That is a lovely, lovely example of a well-cut coat and breeks and leggings, and a very lovely shaped hat. So, and then if you notice that the collar, that collar, it's called a coachman collar, and they came in different, they were numbered, and that number had to do with how high they were. And right in front of that was the stock tie, which was called a plastron in the driving world, not a stock tie. And it was just two pieces, two up, then one across, wide, and it was folded over, terribly stiff with starch, and it goes very, very flat against that collar and against the neck. So there's never any cauliflower look at a groom's livery. It has to be perfectly flat with a nice horsey pin on it. But that it's a special collar for driving. Has nothing to do with what they would wear out fox hunting or anything. So and then Judge Moore, as you see, it could be a hot day, and he has no driving lap robe on. You see, so and lap robes in this country wear according to the weather. And this obviously could be a very warm day in Newport, which it can be. And so he really didn't think and he's up high here. He's not in the way of dust. This is at the casino, so it's a grass ring. So him getting dust and everything, and you know that his reins would be perfectly clean, so that chance of them getting soiling his clothes, it doesn't happen. And another thing too is the collars on these horses. See how well they're laid back. and they really accent the front of these horses. They're beautiful, beautifully made collars. It's a lovely shape and nice and refined, not big bulky collars that you might find on a heavier vehicle. And he's got elbow bits on instead of buxtons, which of course you would have in a little more formal setting. So that's just the same man, same vehicle, different day, and a different informal show and a more formal show, you see. So that is that. If you have any questions on that, we can answer them later or now. And now we have, this is a classic picture. This picture was used in a lot of harness books and magazines years ago. This is Dr. Selwonk, and he was owned by a doctor called Dr. Knowles, which is Selwonk backwards. And Reginald Vanderbilt purchased this horse. This horse is an American trotting bred by a stallion called Junemont. A lovely big chestnut horse. He's got beautiful lines to him. And if you notice, there's no angles here. It's all lovely folding lines. And that's what they look for in America. Not angles, but lovely flowing lines. And this horse is a nice upstanding horse. He was about 16 hands. He can pull his panel boot Victoria well within himself. Beautifully turned out coachman. You'll notice the groom is standing there with the lap robe over his arm, waiting for the owner to come get in the carriage. This was an appointment class, and that is how you would turn out in the show ring or at home. And the groom would be waiting for the occupant with the folded over his arm. And then on the hood of this, right in front of the groom's face, you'll notice the peaks. Well, on a hood, when you folded it down, there are little, on either side, there's little cushions of horsehair. And you have to fold those down very carefully, and you pull the corners of the hood up as you do each fold, so that you don't crush and ruin the material and the lining of your of the head lining that you have here. So you can see how those are peaked, and that is the way that you do with a George IV, a Victoria, any of the vehicles that have a hood on them like that. Those corners have to be peaked because of those little horsehair cushions in there. So that's very important that it goes like that. So yeah, that is a beautifully example of a well turned out Victoria. Yeah, that was considered classic in its day, and that's also taken at that Newport. Okay, next.
Harry, can you talk a bit about the horse's head and what is happening here as far as the brow band and the blinker shape and what would be expected on that blinker?
Well, that blinker is just a square. And it would probably have square-shaped buckles, you see. Then that would be harmonious with the whole turnout. You see, it's a nice square brow band or blinker, and the brow band, of course, would be silver because the Vanderbilt's color was silver, not brass. And it's got a nice collar on it. The horse's head is up where you would want it, looking down the road. You know, what they used to call a harness horse front. And that horse certainly has one. The breeching is well put on. It's at a good angle. It's not going to pick a horse up. It's going to set the hindquarters into the ground when he goes to back up for strength. The traces are a nice length. And you see the French tug is right in the middle of the pad. It's a well harnessed, well turned out horse. Yes, it's lovely. And it has a martingale there at the front that you know, years ago they had standing martingales on carriages, which a lot of people can't understand today, but they did. So that is how that goes with that martingale. Okay.
Thank you.
And this horse it's very conservative, you see. Not a lot of loud color to go with this formal turnout. Okay. And here we have a George IV Phaeton. This is Mrs. John Gherkin with a Brewster. And here you see Phaeton again, pole chains. The poet this is something that people don't quite have asked and don't seem to get. When you drop a plumb line from the nose of the horse, standing still and the trace is tight, that line should come right to the end of the pole. So that's the length of your pole. Usually these poles are around 110 inches long. This is a nice quiet pair standing for the lady. As you can see on the hood, you can see the corners are well peaked. They're all well folded properly. We can't see the groom. He's maybe behind the judges, but it's a very nice. And the horses aren't big. With a George IV, you want them around 14.3 to 15.1. You don't want a pair any bigger than that. You want them to be a very snappy. Phaeton horses were snappy as opposed to a Brome horse or something like that. So you want a very quick and snappy horse, and these pair certainly represent that. Okay, and they got nice, and they have buxton bits, you see. So that's a nice pair of Phaeton horses. Okay, going next. Okay, here we have another pair on the move. This is Isabella Wanamaker of the Wanamaker stores in Philadelphia, driving her famous pair Even Suave. As you can see, everything is lovely. There's got the pole chains. They've got nice length of collar. Both horses are up in their traces. She's not being pulled out of the seat. A nice whip that has a sash will be long enough to touch the horses on their shoulder. Buxton bits, square winkers, and the groom is at the back. He's very smart and not slopping over or anything. He's sitting there right with her. And Miss Wanamaker is having a nice drive with this lovely pair of chestnut mares that were bred up near Buffalo, New York. Okay. Next. And here we have this is a Brewster picture, and here we have a single. This is a horse, as you can see, 15.2, so he's in proportion to the carriage, which is very important. Good angle to the breeching. The tug is right in the middle of the pad. The horse has a lovely turn of front. Some people might have criticized him for having a little too much weight on his legs, but anyway, but he's a nice upstanding Phaeton horse. And he's smart. He's got his ears up and he's just looking smart. And of course, in those days, you know that women might have passengers, maybe the husband or some father or something. So it was not unusual to see pictures of Phaeton horses in the horse show ring with a passenger, because they weren't being judged. But then years ago, Lula Longcombs used to take her nieces and nephews with her, and also her little Boston bulls, you see. And if you notice the dress on them, there was no aprons, lap robes worn in a nice sunny day with these. These ladies had long dresses right to the ankles, so they didn't need a lap robe.
Okay, Barry, I'm going to actually interrupt you for just a moment, and I apologize, but we have a lot of questions coming in.
Yeah.
So if it's all right with you, I would like to go ahead and ask a few of them now while we're talking about these type of vehicles.
Okay.
We have a lot of questions about the standing martingale.
Yes.
Can you explain what they were for and why they would be used on this particular vehicle and maybe not some others?
Well, because these vehicles, as you see, were driven by amateur ladies. And so you didn't want a horse throwing his head up and throwing his head around, you know? So they were there, and they were also used on gigs. And so it was there just to so the horse didn't get fussing and mussing with his head, you know?
Okay.
Just like you see them today, standing martingales, you see them in the hunter rings. You know, go to Devon, stand there in the rail and look at a hunter class. You'll see lots of standing martingales. This was something that was just traditional in those days, a standing martingale with the Phaeton or a gig, yeah.
Excellent.
and the britching here is at a very good angle. And the pad, of course, the pad is heavy because it's a more substantial vehicle than, say, a Viceroy or a Runabout or something like that. So they used a much wider pad. Sometimes I didn't think that I mean, this pad seems to be a little bit wide. Some of them were a little less wide, you see, and they use French tugs, of course. And the traces go on the outside of the billet strap. They don't go between the billet strap and the pad, because that would just wear all the patent off the pad. The traces go on the outside with French tugs. They go on the inside with round tugs.
Fantastic,
Okay.
because that was one of our other questions, is about when you use a wider back pad and when you would use a narrower one. So thank you.
And this pad, I think, could be just narrowed a bit, you know. But you know, if your horse has a little bit long in the back or a little bit low, you can hide that with a nice big wide pad. You can help the look.
And I would imagine the same is true if you had a shorter backed horse and you needed him to look a little, it'd go a little narrower, perhaps.
I'll explain about these classes. They were appointment classes. Everything was turned out. I mean, this was the most expensive carriage that a lady could have in the coach house, the George IV. So when you could have a carriage like this, you had the means. Money was not in short supply. So they had appointment harness. And for a George IV, this harness would have been made to fit this person, just like you would have your suit made to fit you. I mean, you didn't have one suit made to fit you and all your brothers. No, it fits you. So this harness would fit here, and it was, you never were in the last hole. So these traces had 3 holes, and you were buckled in the middle hole. The horse was measured for this, and the bridle and everything else. And you would come across these old sets years ago by Martin and Martin, and they were appointment harness. And you would notice there was 3 holes and to be buckled in the middle hole. And that's, I remember Jessie Cox was sending me a letter about judging, and she said to be buckled in the middle hole, 3 holes buckled in the middle hole. And she said, and I always do look. So anyway, that is a appointment harness for something like this. You just didn't have a big row of holes. You would have 3 holes and buckled in the middle hole, and everything that was for appointments. And then of course you see the groom on the rumble for the groom. That's where his appointments would be. So that was a kit of tools, a folded raincoat, a hat cover, and there'd also be a spare candle in there and the wrench. You know, not a lot.
So thank you so much for answering those questions, Barry. We're going to keep going because I don't want to get us too far behind, but I know that when we were talking earlier, we wanted to talk about this lady's whip.
Yeah, the lady's whip. Well, traditionally the whips are hawthorn, black hawthorn, which came from Ireland. They weren't the blonde holly. They were a black whip for ladies, George IV. And, you know, see how long that whip has to be for the lash to come up and touch the horse on the shoulder. So it was a longer stick and a black hawthorn. And a lot of the black hawthorn wasn't finished with a cap, or maybe just a cap. There was no leather handle or anything. It was just finished off with a small little leather cap. There would be no handle and a ferrule, no. And of course, the metal on the cap, on the whip, would match the metal on the harness. You see?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now here we have kind of done like the opposite of what we just have seen. The horse, to me, is not anywhere near the quality. And of course, you always had to have a nice quality. And of course, look at the collar. See how small that collar is? It's not coming down on the shoulder. So the collar is too small for that horse. Well, she's got a standing martingale on. She's got a buxton bit. But
you wanted to speak about the rain cover that came with this one?
Yeah, the rain covers are, well, we can't see the rain covers, but we can see, if you look at this picture in the middle, you will see the rumble with the rain cover. I was thinking of REIN. All the carriages that came out of a carriage shop, it didn't matter who made them, all had wet weather covers. And this is cover, as here, as you can see, is for that groom's cushion, because see, she could put her head up on that vehicle. And then at the base of the dash in front of her feet is a wet weather apron, which she can unbuckle, the groom would unbuckle, and then it would hook up inside the head on those bows so that she would be perfectly dry. And there's an envelope in the middle of that where she can put her reins through and drive from behind it, you see? So that's, and then she's got a lap robe on her, which could be for wet weather apron, but it's not one that has come out of the dash, you see? And you can kind of see there, just at her feet, this little black thing. Now, those are 2 foot cushions. There would be 2 foot cushions with that, which she would put her feet on. And they're part and parcel of when they were made. Foot cushions just were standard. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, here we have a very nice horse, that had, see the small wheels on this vehicle? These Georgia Force had small wheels, and that meant that they didn't pull very easy. They pulled a little more difficult. So you needed a horse with a really nice set of hindquarters that would could make easy work of handling this vehicle. And this horse certainly has a nice set of hindquarters. He was a big winner at the big shows. His name was Haven Sensation, Hawthorne Melody Farms, Little Long Pedersen driving him, Lawrence Carson on the Rumble. He's just a nice big 15-2 and a bit maybe Phaeton horse that would make easy work of that job. He can still look great pulling it, and you don't want a horse to be struggling, and that's just a very nice shine on the horse and Phaeton and everything. That's just a nice Phaeton horse. Yes.
And is this class taking place in the evening or during the daytime?
Well, we had them both at evening and daytime. And it just would depend. I mean, how the show called for the class. I mean, at evening class, of course, they'd wear evening wear. During the day, you know, you would wear a daytime dress. You know, people in those days didn't run back to the tack room and get dressed up. I remember Mrs. Willits and Jean Brown Scott and them. They came down out of the stands, were dressed properly, sitting and watching the horse show, got in their vehicle, drove their animal, got back out of it, went back up and sat in their box seat. So it wasn't a case of having, you know, special clothes to drive. No, they dressed appropriately, and they just came down, drove, and went in. And Mrs. Pedersen there, she's got a nice dress. I mean, she's put on that little bit of fur there that helps her, but and you see the nice lash on that whip. You see that lash is to touch the horse. So that's nice. In other pictures, you couldn't actually see the lash, but there you can see the lash. Yeah. But we had classes in the afternoon or evening. But in the evening, it's a evening gown, no hat, things like that. Lots of jewels, lots of glitter, lots of bling. A lot. And Jean Thompson in Chicago, she was famous, and Little Longcombs were famous for their huge corsages of orchids. Yes.
Okay, we have several questions about this collar coming in. In your opinion, is this collar a little small for this horse?
I would say yes. It could be a little larger for him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, a nice shape. But now here we have a gig horse. And we have a gig that's too small for this horse. Now, I know this horse was part of a park drag team. And that, as you can see, when Brewster made carriages, gigs, not speaking about any other maker at all, I can't tell you. You went directly across from the top of the hindquarters and went directly across horizontally, and you should come to the top of the dash. And you can see where this gig is. I mean, this mare was 13.3. So this horse here, this gig here would maybe be better off with a 15-1, 15-hand horse, and more of a gig horse. She was a coach horse, part of his park drag team and part of pairs. But you know, she's kind of big. She's just not snappy and zippy enough looking to be a good gig horse. You know. Gig horses had to be really snippy, and you can see the traces there underneath the curve of the shaft, and see how the traces are on the outside, and they're not hidden inside. So the traces are on the outside with French tugs, on the inside with brown tugs. So, yeah, and of course you can see how this. You want a little bit of a rise in front of the whipple tree, but this one has quite a large rise trying to get the shafts up on the pad. So yeah, this is Alfred Vanderbilt. Okay. Okay, here we got Lady Seaton, Judge Moore. Little more to the size. The gig and the horse fits nice. You see the trace on the outside with the round tugs. Collar lays down well on her neck. A very, very fine collar to show off her front end. A nice refined one. This is a Philadelphia horse show. Groom in undress livery. Nice hat. Yeah, I always like to see nice hats on grooms, not something that's not nice. And he's very sharp. They used to say a groom should be 5 feet 7 inches and weigh no more than 140 pounds. And that way he would be in proportion to the vehicle. He wouldn't overshadow it. And he'd be, you know, quick. A groom has to be very quick. People don't understand that when you're a groom and you're doing your job, a groom does not get on or off a still vehicle. When that owner would come to a stop, that groom had better be at that horse's head, not sloppily coming along. You know, he must be there. Same as with the park drag. We'll see that later on. But a groom, if they were properly trained grooms, and they were in those days, they would be at the horse's head when the horse came to a stop, and it didn't matter. It was a tandem, 4, whatever pair. That's about the groom's job. The groom had a special job, and he had special training to do his jobs. I mean, he was a carriage groom. He might have did other things. He maybe did grooming work all day long, and maybe never brushed a horse. His job was to go out with carriages all day long as the carriages were going in and out of the stables and going on places. You see. There's Judge Moore again. No lap robe on. Nice hot summer day. Didn't need one. He's not about to get dirty, you know. And that's just a nice. That's a Brewster Stanhope gig, yes. Yeah. Okay. Now I have another typically American turnout. This is Mrs. John Gherkin, daughter of Francis M. Ware, who wrote the book on driving, and our noblest friend, the horse. This is a runabout, and this horse is 14.3, very quick. And these horses wear what the name says, runabout. They were delivery horses, and they had to really fly, not as fast as a road horse, but faster than a gig horse. But they had a job to do, and one of them was to deliver parcels in the city and things. So they couldn't diddle about. They really had to get and go. So she had another mare that went with him as a pair called Shop Girl. So that's people today. I've seen some runabout classes, and I thought, oh dear. I mean, can we get some speed going on here? We'd never get the parcels delivered, you say. So that is the purpose of this horse. He's a nice size. You can see he's got the right nice breast collar on. He's got, sometimes they had French tugs, some they had round tugs. They didn't do Buxton bits. They did elbow bits, and they did Liverpool bits. And they really could trot on. And yeah, I mean, they could trot on. They could skid the corners. Yeah. So that's a runabout horse, yes. And no breeching. You know, he could stop that vehicle quite easily with the shaft tugs. He didn't. He wouldn't need a set of breeching. No. And neither would you want a gig on flat ground. You wouldn't need breeching at all. Less leather, the better. And the question is there a shield in front of the dash? Can we go back to that one, Kathleen, and see what they're asking? No, there isn't. There's just a wooden. Normally they were a wooden dash. Sometimes they were patent leather, but no, that's just a dash in front of the. That wasn't a shield at all. No, that was just a wooden. Yeah. Okay. Next. Okay, here's George Watson's park drag. This is out in San Mateo Museum in California. It was owned by little Mrs. Lurleen Roth. As you see, the horses are a nice match size, and the wheelers are underneath the toe board where they belong. When you were sitting up on top years ago and looked down, you did not want to see the buckle on the crupper strap. That should be behind the toe board. So you want the horses back in close to the coach. So 15 roosters, 15.3 was about the biggest size that they would get these carriages made for. And then of course 15.2, you know, just a little bit longer, maybe 15.2.5 would be the leaders. And the leaders, of course, were, you know, they want something more, I would say, livelier and beautiful, because that was their job, to be dolly birds, and the wheelers were the workhorses. And so you can see here the difference in the two horses. I mean, but they're still a four. Sometimes you see the wheelers and the leaders, and there's such a difference that what you actually have is two pair. And you think, well, that's not a four. That's not a unit of four. That's two separate things. That's two pairs, and that's not what you're wanting. So you all want to go together. And are the horses too close to the coach? No. He can't go back any farther. You see, the pole chains are tight. The rule for the pole chains was when you pulled a horse up in his traces and you were running the pole chains to put them at the pole head, you snapped them where they were taut, where the chains were tight, and then you backed off 2 links. And that would give them just enough bounce, and it would keep them from getting too far back and towards the splinter bar. So you want them tight, and then back them off 2 links, you see? And the pole chains go from the inside out, and they go, and some, I have seen this, and it's rather scary. They go through the ring on the kidney link. They don't go around the collar like they would on people do pole straps, you see? So that's one thing you got to remember. And yes, that there's no bridging. It's a flat ring, and that little buckle on the top of the collar, yeah, that held that stuff. A good harness, yeah. And of course, you see the seats are all down because there's nobody up on the coach. This is Alfred Vanderbilt winning at Richmond in London with the Vanity Bencher Viking, and the near wheeler, the darker gray, is Storm King. That's Charlie Wilson sitting up beside him, his manager, and Sid Scarlett is tooting the horn. And this is the venture coach that's at the Preservation Society in England. Lovely square road coach lamps. This coach was when it was made, it was called a heavy park drag made road style. So it was made as a road coach, fully appointed according to match the appointments that was in the pioneer of the coaching club. And these are lovely horses. They were, I don't think they were ever defeated. So these were American standard breds, or trotting breds as they were called then. They were in the ATR registry, American Trotting Registry. And these horses could really go. Alfred went very fast, but his stages between runs, between the different coach houses or wherever he was changing horses, was not as long. He went very fast, and so he had shorter runs, maybe 8 miles or maybe 7 miles. But so if the English had 9 changes of horses, he might have 10, or he might, if they did 7, he might have 8, because he just gauged it, because his horses were bred to go fast, and that's what he did. Yeah, his horses went much faster than the British horses.
Carrie, just so that you know, we are running a bit behind.
Okay, well, here we got just the Tandem Club, the father of tandem and driving in America, the original wet tappa cart. This is at Stony Brook. We'll show you the straight shafts, and Burton Mansfield and the Grumman livery. And this is a nice set of a working tandem harness. Maybe they would call it, well, I can see the buckles are horseshoe shaped. So this would be a road tandem, and not necessarily a park tandem. And a little heavier collar on that wheeler. So this is a nice example. This is Burton Mansfield, who was the father of the American Tandem Club, and and the smart leader was essential. And what they didn't have to match in a tandem. You had to have a good steady wheeler and a nice smart leader. Okay, and that's the white tappa cart. It's a Stony Brook. This is a Brewster wagonette brake, body brake, Judge Moore. And this is his first horses. Before he got in the hat, these are standard bred trotters, and that's a nice level team of horses. you know, nice substantial wheelers, nice pair of nice snappy leaders, and grooms all in their coats. Yeah, and we can talk, maybe we'll talk about the groom's coat later. Judge Moore just out for a pleasure drive. You see how short his apron is. He's got an apron on. All it has to do is he's just keeping the reins off his clothes with it. It doesn't need to be any longer than that. He's just got a nice straw hat, and he's out just for a nice drive. Okay. Next. Okay, another American Turnout. This is your Roadsters. Beautiful horse. This is a lovely, sleek horse. He reminds me of a Saluki flying across the desert. This horse could get you down the road. Lovely light harness, round traces. You see the britching on him. Just a lovely American vehicle made with hickory for strength and spring. And the quality of this horse is lovely. And he's a lovely fronted horse, lovely hindquarters. A very fit, athletic horse. This is a lovely, lovely horse. And the road horse harness, you know, was made with rounded parts, and sometimes the buckles were covered with rubber or oroid. And see the snaffle bit he has, and they had overchecks on road horses, not side checks, but so they had overchecks. So this is and he's not humongous. He's just a nice thing where the driver might be able to have a chance to see past him down the road and see if there was anything in the road or on the road, you know. So he's a very lovely size, just a grand horse, just a smart. You'd be very proud to own that horse. That's a nice horse, yes. And here we have a pair of road horses. And as you can see, this is a different type of attachment. They have a neck yoke up front, which is see how snug it is up against the collar? They were snug, right snug up against the collar. And the traces, you see the arch of the pole at the end of the back of the pole, the arch was very high. And so you see how high the whipple trees are at the back, whereas with those other vehicles we saw how much lower the traces were attached to the vehicle, but here they're very high and they're rounded leather. Lovely light collars. They didn't need anything very heavy to pull that vehicle, and they really could go. I mean, you'd be out flying with that. You could really get to town and back with that nice pair of road horses. And see how they got like lovely quality, and they both match. They're just very nice quality horses. Yeah, that was a big thing: matching horses and quality horses. Good conformation, style, quality, action, beauty. Yeah, that's a lovely winning pair of horses. Yeah, very, very nice. That's a good example. You know, sometimes you see pictures. I always say every picture should be a lesson. Sometimes it's a bad lesson. Sometimes it's a good lesson. This and the previous single horse for runabouts or for road wagons, beautiful lessons. Beautiful horses that could really trot you down the road. Okay. And now here we got what was put in the Rider and Driver magazine way back when. 1900 and above, and they show the proper attachment of the pole straps and the breastplates or false martingales, you see. So there is the first one, correctly adjusted from the ring out, would go out to the end of the pole, and they have the billet of the false martingale around the inner wire of the kidney link, you see. Now that's for park horse turning out. The next one, they got road form, and the breast collar or the billet goes around the collar and holds it there on, you see. And then the next one is, it's going, and they've just got it on the kidney link, you see. Well, that's totally wrong. And then number 4 is correct park form with the breastplate around the inner wire of the kidney link, you see. So that's where it goes there. But if you have a set of harness where the kidney links are not joined, you can't do that. Those kidney links either were solid with a little wow in the middle there, or they had a little latch that went up and down and closed them. So and the number 5 is a twisted pole straps. It's not laying flat. You see, it's all been twisted when it was buckled on, and it just needs to be straightened out. But it was like the first picture is how it's straightened out nicely, and this one is how it's badly. Okay. And now here we have Alfred Vanderbilt. driving his team. And now if you see this groom, this picture, we put it on here because of the groom. That groom is booking it. He's got to come off the rumble, and he's got to be at the leaders' heads when they stop. That's his job. So he's booking it. And when Albert comes to a stop, and this goes way back when in the tradition of coaching, that when these coachmen and the road horse coaches came to a stop at a pub, they didn't, if they were just changing horses, they didn't necessarily get down off the coach. They weren't stopping for lunch or anything else. They were just changing horse and on. And so you had to be at the horses' heads, because that coachman, as soon as he stopped, he just threw the reins, one to the left and the other one to the right. So they just fell to the ground, and then they took and run them through again up to the leaders, and unhooked those horses and threw the new fresh team in, and off they went. He would catch the reins with his whip. They would throw the reins up to him. He'd stick his whip out. The reins would fall down the whip into his arm, and he'd put them in hand. He'd do that 4 times, had the reins all there, and off he went. So that was to really not lose any time. These are quick changes, you see. So that's that groom doing his job. We're at Newport many years ago. Terry Shaw and myself, Ms. Candy Van Allen, Bob Weaver's coach. And so, as you can see, there's no fluff on the neck about the plastrons. They're very, very, very quiet. Nice brown tops on the boots. Pants are the nice length, so they don't get in the way when you're going up and down, because you had to run up and down those last steps a lot. So you didn't want them flopping or in the way or anything else. So those are nice lengths of livery coats, yes. And Terry's hat could be tipped a little forward. This is Mr. Colston from England. A beautiful, beautiful matched park team. Beautiful, beautiful team. I mean, those horses look like they all could be full brothers. That's just all beautiful. Grooms are well done. The coach is well turned out. This is at a horse show, and of course in England you have to carry people, so the gammon backs are up. It's just this is Tom Ryder thought that this was just about as good as it gets in England for turning out a lovely park team. And they're all up in their traces nicely, and they're just beautiful horses, beautifully turned out. It's what you would expect. Any questions on this?
Did you want to talk about the jacket in the front? On the front.
The jacket on the groom. Well, the jacket, you see, you don't want them long. He's got a job to do. He's got to go up and down, up and down, up and down those stairs. You see. So for a groom, you want your jacket or coat edge, which was raw. It wasn't hemmed or anything. It was a raw cut. You want it to be coming to the end of your middle finger, so you could get up and down quite easily. And you didn't want a very long, bulky coats, because you had a job to do, and you want them all very neat and prim, and you want to have a nice waist, and we'll go on and we'll show the picture of the liveries. We'll point certain pictures out of which you're looking. Okay, now here we have Mrs. Hayden in England at the Royal Show at Kenilworth with the Holland Park Drag. John King and I on the rumble, and you see the length of her apron, you see, and that's all she would need. That it was a nice day in July, so that's enough. And of course, with Maury Wood and George Freeman doing the reins, they were perfectly clean. There would never be any soiling on her clothes from her reins with Maury and George cleaning that harness. I'll tell you that. That's a nice length for an apron for a 4-in-hand. Yes. Okay, and as you notice, there's no lamps on the coat. Okay, now this is an interesting boat. This is American style, 1884, and you look at, there's just no aprons at all. There's no lap robe on the driver. There's no aprons on the pad. I mean, they're up good and high. I mean, and it's a hard road, so there would be no dust issue there. They wouldn't need it for dust issue. And of course, the lady, she's got on her nice white dress and everything, and yeah, they didn't wear aprons like that. That's a fad today. Today it's a fad. There's no reason. It's just become a fad. This is just Mr. Parker, I meet at the coaching club in New York. And so that's just, we put that picture on to show the difference between gentlemen with their aprons. There's a difference between an apron and a lap robe. An apron was worn by a four-in-hand driver and a tandem driver, and it buckled. Everybody else just had lap robes. Okay, and here we have lap robes, and these are American collars, Smith and Worthington of Connecticut, and you see they're made of cotton, Indian whipcord, which is very light, linen for the summer. They're very light, and you see the patterns and everything else. They're very, very light for the summer, so they just would keep the dust off if you're driving on a runabout or a top buggy or a Surrey or something like that. You didn't want wool in the summer because it's just too hot, and America gets very, very hot. So this is what they did over here. Maybe other countries, 65 was a hot day and then they would use wool, but in America they used, you see here, they used and they called them dusters, so the linen lap dusters, and they were very, very light. And you left them behind on the carriage. They weren't strapped on around your waist or anything. So when you stepped out, you just left your lap robe or your duster on the seat. You didn't go shopping with it on or anything like that, or go into a house to pay a social call. You just picked them up and took them off, and then you put them on and you back on. You see, so that's what they did. That's the lap robes and how the linen and the cotton, the very light for the heat over here. Okay, and these are just pony gigs. The gentleman driving their pony gig and horse. There's Alfred B. McClay, Millbrook, New York, with a horse he raised. Ted Graham with a smart little, really, really smart champion gig pony of the day, Cambridge. But I've screwed the pictures up here. But that's really Cambridge leader with Ted Graham driving. Big winner. And then there's Claire Pettipiece on the bottom picture with pilot model, a very smart, sharp pony. Gigs animals have to be very sharp and crisp. But they say smart trot, they really have to step out. And then they got to come down to a walk. And then they have to do a park trot. So it takes a bit of training and a special animal to be a gig pony or a gig horse. They have to be sharp, and they have to really take that amateur gentleman around there and really, really do the job. And if you notice, there's no breeching on these gigs. You don't need one, you see, for a show ring, because it's perfectly flat. I mean, these ponies can stop them with the shaft tugs. Now, with a horse, I think we've got the next picture shows horses. Well, Mr. Newman has one up here at the top right. But the appointment class called for a kicking strap, because the gig horse could be a little bit bold and maybe not quite rank, but he wasn't as quiet and mannerly and everything. He was judged on brilliance first, where a lady's phaeton horse was judged on manners first. So they had to have different qualities, you say. So they really had to get on down the road, and these are and all these gigs are in nice proportion to the horses. You see, you're coming right across the hindquarters and right across the dash. These are, and they balance. You see, a gig has to be balanced. It doesn't ride down on the horse's back, and it doesn't ride up on its stomach. It just floats, and the horse pulls with his traces. Okay. And this is Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt in London with the Venture team. And the thing that, of course, you see, everybody will talk about is pants, but you know, there was a lot of horse manure on the streets in those days, and so you didn't have a long pants dragging on the dirt because of that. But the thing, if you look at his left hand, that is his glove has been put on, and then he's folded it back down. That is called a coachman's cuff. And you will see pictures of the ladies' four-in-hand of New York and the people having that there. It's not taped around the wrist or buckled or anything else. It is folded back down, and to give freedom of the wrist when you're driving a four-in-hand. So that is the lesson here, the coachman's cuff. And that's a very nice sample of that. Okay, any other questions on this picture? Okay, now here we got livery. We got grooms on the inside, and we've got coachmen on the outside. Grooms have 6 buttons. Coachmen's have 4. They didn't sit on the middle 2, you see. Coachmen's coats, you see how much longer they are because he's sitting on the box, and the groom's coats here are a nice short length. They could actually be maybe a little shorter, maybe an inch or so shorter, but they're very nice. And the thing you'll notice here is the proper top hats. See the bell shape and then how the brim is bent up? That is a proper groom's top hat. Now, if that was an owner, the owner's hat would not have that bell shape on the side. They would be perfectly straight and the brims would come out perfectly straight. So if you were in a crowd, you could take a look at the hat and you'd know that's the owner, that's a groom. So these top hats came as a pair. You had the silk ones for the bright sunny days and you had the cashmere ones, kind of like a felt, for the rainy days. So you were issued these clothes that came with your job, and if you looked after them well, and when it came next time for the tailor to come out to measure you for clothes, and your clothes were in lovely condition, well, then you might be able to buy get a suit of clothes for yourself instead of another set of livery if you looked after your clothes. You see, and these gloves, they don't turn down like a coachman's do. They have a button at the back. So, and you'll see they got 6 buttons and 6 buttons, but sometimes grooms were very short. You know, a lot of the grooms were very young, only 13, 14, 15 years old, coming over from Ireland and London. And so they didn't have a long enough body, so they would have maybe 5 buttons instead of 6. So you'll see that on different coats, and you'll think, oh, little guy. And some of these coats you'll see, Jack Day has some that are very tiny for very tiny people. You know, Judge Moore had some very small grooms. You know, so and they were very young. Yeah. So, but lovely hats. Okay, now here's out in a country stable. They've got going for a drive. They've got a lap robe on, nice pair of roan horses. It's a phaeton. You got pole chains. The groom looked like he's been there quite some time. Been a retainer. He's worked with the family probably for years, since he was a young lad. And this is just a very nice country turnout, going for a drive in the country. It's very nice, serviceable horses that they would join a nice group of friends, maybe for a drive, or just go out on their estate. But this is just a nice pair of horses. Okay, anything else in that? Okay, now here we have, now this is very extravagant. This was not the normal, but anyway, this was, I think, Lawson Stable out of Boston. As you can see, the number of horses that they would have in these stables and the number of horses that would be used. I mean, there was maids going here, people going shopping, this and that, and all kinds of, a lady of the house would go, and the gentleman would go. And so they had a lot of horses that would be going in and out. You can see on these poles at the back of the horses, there's it's like ribbon horizontal, and then there's look like heads of wheat. That was braided in there, and that kept it up. And you can find out how to do that in Garland's book, The Private Stable, that shows you how to do all that weaving. But and this is a stable that's called Set Fair. There's the straws all flopped up and twisted and turned so that it doesn't it stays put. There's a special turn of the 3-prong wooden pitchfork that you do, and you twist it and twist it and twist it, and it prevents the straw from coming out. It stays put. Jean Wenham could do it beautifully. She was a master at that. Yes. Okay. And here we have the harness rooms, which were the pride of the stable. So here we have on the left, we have a set of road coach harness. And then we've got a single harness and pair harness, hand tack on the tack room. You see the different bits and the curb chains and everything, all polished and all set up and a nice thing. This was, I think, this was Dixfield Farm, north of Chicago, Waukegan, part of Temple Smith's place now. But and the ribbons are on the top. Of course, that was a thing. But this is a well, neat and tidy, and all the special hooks for all the different parts, the reins, the traces, and the bridging and everything else. So it's a very lovely stable setup, tack room, and they would be very proud of that. And the boss, you know, would be. I can remember John Goodwin talking about his dad, and somebody had put the blankets on the end of at the stall, and it wasn't just perfect. And so he went down the row and he pulled all the blankets down, and then they had to come back and do them all perfectly again. So they were all perfect. Here we have a lovely stable. You see, there's lots of steel work here. On the right, the middle wall, you can see pole chains, and there'll be bits and everything else steel. Up above that is our lovely lead bars of every shape and description for four and hand tandem. And then there's saddles in the corner, the lovely cabinet in the middle. And sometimes these had glass tops where they would put sleigh bells and special brow bands and ribbons and things like that in them. They're very, very nice. But you can just see how everything is neat and tidy, and everything in its place, and a place for everything, and all the four and hand harness at the back. A lovely example of if you want to set up your tack room and how did it look? Here's how it looked. This was traditional, how it looked. Okay. All right. Is that it?
That is it. We do have some questions for you.
Okay.
And so we're going to keep this a little short because we're going to go over, which is fine because we have a lot of questions coming in.
Okay.
So you did mention one book. If you had to recommend one or two books, which ones would you recommend?
Well, there were the four. One was Private Driving by Jorrocks or James Garland. Then you had Driving by Francis Ware. Then you had Driving by Francis T. Underhill. And then the Manual Coaching by Fairman Rogers. But, you know, those are big books and sometimes they're hard to come by. But there's smaller books. Tom Ryder's On the Box Seat has covered this. Hints on Driving by Morley Knight is a wonderful book. So, you know, you can get smaller ones without having to spend a lot of money. But the thing that you need to do and remember is the horse is the thing. The rest is just the frame. That is the most important thing about all of this. It's the horse is the thing. The rest is just the frame. I see people get all worried about hats and the ribbons and no. You show me a beautiful horse, I'll be impressed. I'm not interested in a bad horse, and you worried about the hat band. But anyway, and also, if you have any problems, call the CAA office or email them. And the Carriage Museum of America has the most outstanding resource ever in the world, and it's all there. They have, I don't care what you dream up, John will find the answer there for you. It is all there. They have fabulous things there. That book that they bought years ago at Martin's that I was involved in, and John has done a lot of research on that with his Russian friends and reading Russian. And the only other copy of that book is in the Kremlin in Moscow. So you've got one in the Kremlin in Moscow and the other in the CMA library in Lexington Horse Park. So there's just fabulous stuff there. And if you have any questions, well, it's all there. It's all there. That's what it's there for. Go to the CMA library. It's fabulous.
So I did want to just mention the books that you were talking about. Many of them are available online now, so that you can read them online. And you can, in most cases, go through the CMA's library to get to those. Otherwise, you can use Google Books to get to those.
Yes, yeah, pretty well. They're all online someplace, you know. But but the CMA library and the Carriage Association, they're there to help you do all this.
Yes,
so
we do have a large.
Excuse and say, well, I don't know, because it's all there. I hear people come to me, well, so and so said this and so this, and then my question to them is, on what do you base your authority? I mean, I'm talking off 60 years. And working for these top people. I mean, when I was young and keen, very keen, over keen, I had a million questions and they had 1,000,001 answers. And these people I was asking, like Billy Pinch and Ted Williams and Tommy Cartwright and Dave Smith and Frank Brown, I mean, they were all in their 90s, but this was their life. This is what they had done all their life. So the information is all there. There's no excuse that you have to ask a lot of questions. It's all there, and you find out, okay, well, I need to know this. Well, you get in touch with them and they will provide you with the correct authentic answers.
Okay, so we have a question that comes up quite frequently. We have two. The next two are quite frequent. When is a gray top hat appropriate and when is a black appropriate?
Okay, Billy Pinch told me this many, many years ago, and he was a top professional in Canada. He worked for all the big stables. And he told me, and it made so much sense. See, all this stuff makes sense once you think about it. He said, hats match front and back. So when you see somebody driving a park drag, the owner will have usually will have a silk top hat on, and his grooms have silk top hats on. And you see a road coach, the driver has a what they used to call a white hat, but a gray top hat, and the guard has a hat similar like that. Sometimes it's brown fur or beaver, and then but gray. Now it's gray. So hats match front and back. That is the easiest way. The gray was always donated, not donated, denoted for the professionals. And so if you see some of these old pictures with a whole bunch of horses in the ring, and there's one or two in there with driving with a gray top hat, you know that they're professional coachmen. Maybe John Goodman, Billy Pinch, Paddy O'Connell, all those people,
Great. So the next question is one that we've had a couple of times. With the square blinkers, there's various types and shapes of blinkers. When do you use square blinkers, and when do you use hatchet shape or D shape, whatever you would like to?
Round or D shape, yeah. The round or the D shape, we're a little less formal. And your buckles were of the shape to match them.
Fantastic.
So if you were doing like a runabout, they would have square blinkers, but so it really doesn't really get into it. A park drag, normally now they do blinkers. I mean, Alfred Vanderbilt's road coach harness had square blinkers on, you see, but it had horseshoe shaped buckles and ring draft on the hames, you see. So just go look at some pictures. Go get some old pictures and then watch and learn, and then you say, okay, I just see what they're doing. But
So,
they had horseshoe shaped buckles for road coach harness, and they had the square, for the more park drag harness, fair harness, and stuff, Joseph Forth Payton's, and so they and the thing we say when you see this horse here, the harness, the hames would weigh more for the wheelers than they would for the leaders. The buckles were just a little bit bigger for the wheel harness than they were for the lead harness. It was appointment harness, and it was just made in proportion to the horses. Yeah. If you can ever find a lovely set of Martin park drag harness appointment set, you will notice this, and you think, oh, okay, I see what they're talking about. It just wasn't kind of put together. It was well thought out.
So can you talk for just a moment, because we are getting quite over on time, about the pulley bradoons on these?
Pulley bradoons, well, that was some people used them, some people didn't. The Royal Stable at Windsor Castle still uses them, pulley bradoons with their state harness. The horse could go down so far, and then he'd say up, and then he'd come back up. That was the purpose of them. They just couldn't lean in them. If they were a straight bearing rein that just went and stopped at the bradoon bit, they could kind of lean in those. But if they went into a pulley bradoon, which kind of had that pulley effect, and they go down, they go whoops, and then they come back up and sit up in their bridles better. Yeah.
So what is the difference?
They're also a great bit for training a horse to sit up in his front and not be going around like a harnessed pig with his head between his legs. Yeah.
So can you quickly explain the difference between an overhead check and side checks?
This, as you see, there's side checks here, which were on for heavy harness. The over checks was what you used on road horses, and they would get their nose up there a bit and supposedly opened up their windpipes, and so when they were flying at good speed, they had they wouldn't choke off. You see now their heads can't get any lower than that, so they can't over bridle and choke. You see.
And of course, we're not asking them to bend in a dressage class or anything like that.
No. There's a whole different. You got to remember, this stuff was going on 100 years before any combined driving. This was all done for a long time ago. So there's nothing new. No, if people try to invent the wheel. But if you look at these pictures, what we've seen tonight, it's been there. I mean, this picture here, Albert died in 1915. So this is from England, maybe 10, 11, 12. So that's over 100 years ago. And if you looked at that harness there today at Devon, you see, well, it's the same thing, the same groom. It hasn't changed, No. And if you look at none of them on the box, there's no aprons there. No aprons. It's a modern fad. It is, and then they get matchy, and they do this.
Okay. So we have one more question for you.
Always according to the weather. Pardon?
I'm sorry. We have one more question for you, and then we're going to wrap it all up. Everybody is very appreciative of all the time that you have spent with us tonight. And it is a question about the blinker liners.
Yes.
They come in different shades a little bit now. We have browns and blacks.
Very modern thing. That's a very Amish thing. English harness is black. Amish harness is brown. So yeah, that's a very modern thing. No, an English harness is always black. And that's when they started to go to these Amish harness makers in Pennsylvania that they started to get the brown liners, but it was never like that before. None of these pictures here would be like that. No.
All right. Well, we greatly appreciate you spending this time with us, Barry. And everybody has thoroughly enjoyed the presentation they're saying here. And we would, again, like to thank everyone for coming. We had a great turnout tonight. We will be doing another session on the 29th of this month. So we hope that you can join us. We will be talking about the treasures from the CAA library and the Ken Wheeling archives. In between, we have a quiz afternoon on the 21st on the 3rd. And I can tell you that there's going to be a question about that kicking strap that Barry was talking about. And so we have a couple questions about when this will be posted online. It will go into the members only area. It'll probably be up there after 10 o'clock tonight. If you are a CAA member, you should be able to sign in to the members only area. If you're not a CAA member, I will post that onto the Facebook event page so that those that have paid to be here can see it. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us. And thank you so much to Barry for being with us. We appreciate it, everyone.
And go to the CMA library for your information. That's what John's waiting for you.